to office. How viable is this? Well, in studio for this conversation, Evans Wafula still staying on with us, but we're also joined now by political analyst John Kagusia. Thank you so much for joining us on Morning Express. And gentlemen, of course, this is a story that has been making headlines now pretty much for the better part of the year. And I will be referring to the Standard newspaper for this because on the front page there, we have some prices of basic commodities. The price of maize flour now shooting up to 180 shillings, up from 90 shillings. That is twice the price. Milk is retailing at an average of 70 shillings, up from 45 shillings. The likes of Skuma Wiki now retailing at 30 shillings, up from 10 shillings. And these are basic commodities. John, let's begin with you. We've had President Uhuru Kenyatta now saying that they're working around the clock to ease this situation. But critics have asked, what is it they can do in a few days that they haven't been able to do for the past 5 years?
Well, thank you very much. We have the issue of prices, which are skyrocketing. And as you may know, issues of prices really is a matter of supply and demand. Ordinarily, when you have a lot of supply, you have prices going down. And when you have a lot of demand and the supply is short, then in that case you have prices shooting up. In this case, you see we have had...
All right, John, I understand we have a problem with your sound. We'll be coming back to you. So let's engage you, Evans, in terms of what the government really can do different this time that they haven't been able to do for 5 years.
I think we need to avoid to be very academic when it comes to this kind of a problem. This is more, to me, I think, more than just the mathematics about the economy. We know that in many governments, on many transitional processes, is that you can use even poverty and food to make people easy or even to govern. But I don't want to say that that's what's been going on. I think we know very well that corruption, the prices of food, we know unemployment, quite almost the problems that the country faces can affect also the rains. You know, we've been having problems also with the rains, so the production of food has not been very good. But I think what is important is that the institutions have really collapsed, failed. Institutions like that need to cushion, especially the wananchi, so that they can be able to afford even a meal in their house. Because when we talk about food, the food prices going high, and you're not looking at the political environment, because political environment directly affects the economy and affects also how the prices of food. So I think our politics is in such a way that it's so entrenched into our lives. It's part of our lives every day, whether we have good politics, whether we have bad politicians. But I think institutional failure and how the price of food have been actually been used politically. Because
but of course, the question that one would wonder is, what exactly can the government do? We are now just less than 100 days. We're in 2 digits in terms of how many days we have before we get to the election. Why now? Is it because of the pressure that has come up from the opposition? Remember also on May Day, it was mentioned, but even before that, when there was the reading of the budget, one of the things that was expected is that with the zero rating that was put on food prices, the prices should come down. They have not come down. They've actually gone up. So, John, I don't know, what is it that the government can do at this point in time that really can cushion the wananchi, because the pain is being felt at the bottom?
Yeah, I think I would want to repeat probably what I said now that was not clear, that we have an issue of supply and demand. That is the first place we begin at. And you realize that when we have a lot of supply and we have low demand, then the prices normally go down. And when we have a high demand and less supply, then prices would ordinarily then go high. And in this case, what we have seen is that we are coming from a period of prolonged water scarcity because of drought. And because of this reason, then you find that the supply that we have of the food commodities is quite low. And the demand, of course, remains high. In fact, goes even higher with the increasing or the growing population. Now, really, that is a principle, that's a concept that is there, and it's something that we cannot refute. Now, what we need to look at is, as a country, why is it then that when we have a drought, we have a problem with the supply of food commodities? Probably that's why we need to look at it. And that really is not explained by the current political scenario. It is an issue of systematic failure of our institutions in this country for over 50 years to probably do proper planning, for that kind of exigencies. And so it is not about what the government has done or has not done probably in the last 4 years. It's a little bit much more of what is it that we have not done for a long period of time. Really, it's a systematic issue. And we've got to be looking at the issue of the root cause, not just what we are seeing as the symptoms or even what is being expressed today through the high food prices.
So how do we address that high cost in terms of having long-term solutions? Because as it is, what we're hearing from State House that the President will be issuing fresh orders to Parliament through the supplementary budget. But is this really going to iron out the underlying factors such as production and supply for the long term?
I know one of the problems that the President will be having at the current moment is because this drought seems to have coincided also with the high political temperatures in the country. And so one of the things that the President has to do really is to ensure that he comes in to kind of help the country to have these food prices going down. And so one of the things I expect to see the President doing is to have some kind of fiscal policy interventions rather than just monetary kind of interventions in the country. So one of the things that we are likely to see is the Parliament being recalled. And probably what they will see, and I think that has been communicated, is an issue of budgetary intervention. So like, for example, the Parliament would probably be debating how to pass a budget which is going to support the government, probably either importing or even subsidizing some of those taxes that are levied on some of these food products. And so probably we are going to see more imports in the short term, so that can help us to boost the supply in the country, and that way we will have the food prices going down to some extent. Now you asked that we had some mention of this in the budget reading that was done recently, and this has probably not reflected on the food prices at the current moment, as we can see. Now what has happened is that when this was done, the government gave a 4-month window to do imports of maize and other foodstuffs that were to be zero-rated. And now, for 4 months for this to take place, it takes time to import and bring these food products to the country and cereals. And I think I have heard the first imports are actually being cleared now in the port. And when that hits our local market, it is going to increase the supply. But then you've got also to be looking at the issue of the millers that we have in the country, because again, they have kind of oligopolistic kind of tendencies in the way they deal with these things. So they kind of also play a part in fixing the prices, because when they come together and give a certain price, they are likely to defeat the purpose of the government lowering the costs or the taxes. So what needs to be done is the government will need also to come in and directly have a discussion with the millers, so that then whatever advantage they are taking up from the government policies can be transferred directly to the consumers, hence bringing down the prices.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Evans, maybe how long because at the end of the day, Mwananchi wants to go into the supermarket and buy that unga and find the price has come down. We can have a very intelligent debate, but at the end of the day, Mwananchi just wants literally to buy that unga. Yeah, for 90 bob, or even less if possible. Practically, what time frame would we be looking at between now this happening? Because here we are, and Kalonzo Musyoka has asked, as it's articulated in the Standard, Jubilee is taking Kenyans for a ride. What can they achieve in 2 months that they could not do in 5 years? So practically, even if, like the president through his spokesman said, through Parliament, they're going to see how this can be done. Practically, how long would this take?
Actually, as I said, academics can't help us now. I think a nation that can't feed its people is not a people's government, And I think what was happening now, even with the legislations that they are trying to bring up, they take time. We know how our parliament works. I think what needs to be done in the shortest time possible, I think the government should actually just decide whether it will be able to cushion this in the shortest time possible, and release funds that can also go to homes. I mean, I know there are countries that have faced these problems before, and what the governments have done is that they have given subsidies to to families. I mean, they have given some small relief funds for them to be able to sustain themselves until when the situation is actually taken care of, averted. But I think when we talk about legislation, it's so escapist. You know, I mean, it will go to parliament, it will take time, there are debates, a lot of things will happen.
It's a process.
It's a process, and you cannot tell people in 2 months when they're really, really into the campaign, people will use, now we're going to see politicians using food even to campaign.
As bait.
Yeah, I mean, a situation is being created here whereby if you see a politician with a truck of rice and stuff like that, that's the person you want to talk to.
And of course, there's been a lot of speculation as to whether these prices are just coming now prior to the election, because this is being used as campaign money, so to speak. Many saying that the opposition's promise of bringing down the cost of living after 90 days is only achievable because campaigns will be over by then, and there will be incentive for the government to do the same. So in terms of good governance, John, let's come in and how that will impede the situation.
Definitely, as you can see, unfortunately, we are politicizing a sensitive issue to the common mwananchi. And so to say, I would rather Kalonzo Musyoka, probably, Mudavadi, and even Raila Odinga, not so much politicize this issue. Because, as I have said, you've got to be looking at the root cause of this problem. It is failure for a long period of time, over time. It's not a 4-year...
The government could argue and say
it is not a 4-year issue.
Project.
It's not a 4-year issue. Jubilee government, for example, without holding brief for the Jubilee government, they have been in power for 4 years. But we are looking at an issue which has had a problem from, for the last many years. Kalonzo Musyoka has been in government since 1985. Mudavadi has been in government since 1989. And mind you, these two gentlemen have been cabinet ministers, strong cabinet ministers, and they have not had this kind of a problem, we have not had a good plan to kind of get away with this problem of drought and water management in the country. But now, what I would say is that there's hope, because if you look at the Vision 2030, which was put in place, during the Kibaki-Raila regime, it kind of tends to come up with a systematic way to address this issue. You see, like the dam that Jubilee government is now implementing, the Thakwe Dam in Ukambani, that one is a part of the Vision 2030. The Kulalu irrigation project is also a Vision 2030 project. If you look at the Itare Dam in Kericho, again is a Vision 2030 project. All these projects, are ongoing now. And once they are completed, we are likely to see, some of these problems being dealt with, at that level. So really, it's not an issue that we can look at just as a political issue for the moment. But again, because it has been raised politically, then the president also has to kind of also respond to some extent politically. And that is why you see he has to kind of, also bring a bit of interventions and even talk about it. And what I've seen is that there's quite a bit of concern about it, because if it was raised during the budget time, again, when the president was being endorsed as a Jubilee candidate, again, he raised the issue and even proposed certain measures which have to be taken, which I think they are good measures, and we hope and believe that they will work. And what I would rather see also from the opposition is coming up with serious practicable solutions to this problem, because it is affecting, as much as it affects, the consumers who are served by Jubilee, it also affects the consumers who are also supporters. Let me say supporters, not who are served, supporters of Jubilee. It also affects the consumers who are supporters of NASA. So really, it is an issue that we all need to come together, have concerted efforts and deal with it systematically, and ensure that we have these food prices coming down, so that it's an issue that doesn't disturb Kenyans and doesn't make us have problems like we are seeing today.
Right, of course, this is a debate that will be taking place in Parliament tomorrow. Kenyans will highly be watching this. It is a very high interest story, so to speak. Evans, what will you be expecting to come out of this?
I think Kenya is a resilient, Kenyans are resilient people. We will not see food riots, because we know many countries have been facing food riots, and food riots can actually even bring governments down, because food is a very sensitive thing. I mean, nobody should joke about an angry stomach. And what we're going to see is that we will see, of course, the normal, parliamentarians discussing about it, but I don't think in 2 months we're not going to see anything tangible. But I think Kenyans, as we've always been saying, tunavumilia kwa Wakenya.
Of course, we just want to buy our unga at 90 shillings or less, as Michael says. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Evans Wafula and John Kagusia, both political analysts, joining